Hey everybody, we are live, Cowboy Metals live stream for Thursday, February 22nd, 2022. Welcome everybody to the program. We'll give it a few minutes for everybody to load. The subject of today's talks is going to be talking about U.S. sanctions Russia on the threat of war in Ukraine. I've got a poll up for everybody interested. I see we had about 19 people vote already. Does the Ukraine standoff result in a new hot war? 32% or about a third say yes, 53% or slightly over half say no. The rest 16% say yes, but limited regionally. We'll get into this discussion here in a moment as people come into the broadcast. Once again, it is Cowboy Metals Live. We broadcast from the great state of Texas, and we take no BS and we tell it like it is, and that's what we're going to do today with regards to what's going on in Ukraine. Biden has called the Russian advancement into the eastern part of Ukraine an invasion, and a lot of people seem to agree with him. We'll wait for everybody to get filtered in. In the meantime, a reminder, if you go to 𝙂𝙊𝙇𝙑𝙀𝙍 and put your name down there where it says newsletter and your email address, we get a free one time a week email from us, which is our newsletter. Our weekly newsletter on Mondays, where we'll fill you in on everything we've done for the weekend, add a bit of additional information, including some special precious metals deals you're not going to get anywhere else. You will only get it through Gold Silver Pros and only through that email. So go sign up for that. Once again, that's 𝙂𝙊𝙇𝙀𝙍. Click on the newsletter link, put in your name and email address. Welcome everybody to the program. Remember that super chats are open. Add those if you wish to grab my attention to answer your questions. And of course, I always try to answer questions in the general chat as well. Welcome everybody to the program. Ralph Potts is here. Moderators Michael and Peter are here. Thank you for joining us tonight. Pasty Moth is here. Juan Crespo is here. Miles Nelson is here. Spiderhead is here. Neil Hahn is here. Welcome everybody to the program. EC660. Faz-Doll, Spiked Head, Die Crack, Alvin Cabrera, and many more here. Kenneth Martin is here. Thank you everybody for joining. We're going to talk about the whole Russian thing. So put your comments and questions in the chat. I see we have a very lively chat tonight. As I said about a week or two ago, I thought the saber rattling between the US and Russia on Ukraine was going to turn into an actual conflict. We've got reports that there are actually some deaths on the Ukrainian side and that Russia has indeed invaded and or moved troops. However you want to define that into the eastern parts of Ukraine. We'll get into all the news there, where actually before we do that are going to get started on inflation, because inflation is raging and I don't want this geopolitical situation to distract from the fact that we have higher prices than we should be having, and that it's reflected in the producer price index. And I want to bring that information to you. That's very important. I think inflation is probably the biggest threat to anybody in the United States right now. And so we want to cover it for just a moment before we dive into the rest of the program. So we'll get the share screen running, and we're going to talk exactly about that. So on the screen right now, I have the US Producer Price Index. This information came out, a few days ago. We're sitting at 9.7% for this month after having 9.8% last month. What is the producer price index, you ask? It is the amount that producers pay for their inputs to make goods and services. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the next to last indicator of inflation in the cycle until you get to the CPI, which is consumer price index. So right now, the producers are paying 9.7% more than they were this time last year, year over year. Last month, it was 9.8%. So we're sitting in almost double digits. And what the producers are paying, and for anybody that believes the CPI is less than this number, believes that the producers are taking the brunt of the inflation and not passing consumers. I don't. That's another sign that the CPI is not a useful indicator. In any case, we're basically at double-digit inflation in the producer prices. And if you look at shadow stats, and they use a 1980s method for calculating inflation, we're sitting at 14 to 15%. Again, I did not want this to get lost in the midst of all this Ukraine talk. It's important that we understand and discuss the issues going on with inflation in the economy, because they are the bigger threat, not only to our portfolio, but to our way of living here in the United States, because these prices will erode our ability to live, and it's very important to talk about. I probably should do a breaking news segment on that, but we just put it in here while we wait for people to load. We're at about 75 people, so we're doing good. Hello, Fabricio Rodriguez. Hello, Leonard Harview. Hello, everybody that has joined the program. All right, let's get to it. We're talking Russia. So I've got a map up for anybody that hasn't been following the news the last couple of weeks. Maybe you're on vacation, or maybe you thought, hey, this is not such a big deal. Weren't quite aware of the whole situation around Ukraine. We're going to kind of start from the beginning. So I'm at the Guardian right now. And the reason I'm at the Guardian, because they have this great map. So here is the Ukraine. Here are the eastern segments of Ukraine that Russia now controls by moving troops in there. It's Donetsk and Luhansk. And I'm not saying these correctly, but I'm not a Ukrainian or in Eastern Europe, so forgive me. But Donetsk and Luhansk, these red areas, are where Russian troops are. And it was also reported in the news that, I believe it was on CNN. I saw this today. In fact, I know it was about 5 or 6 minutes ago, that there are at least 2 Ukrainian in the military that have died. According to the Ukrainian press reports, 2 Ukrainians have died from shrapnel from rocket attacks from pro-Russia sources. Now, I didn't say from the Russian military. It said from pro-Russia forces, if you will. So I don't know if that's Russia or it's analogs or mercenaries or what they are, but attribute to Ukrainian members of their military have died from these attacks. So we do have a couple of deaths. So it isn't just the saber rattling we had last time we talked about it. It's an actual conflict. It's an actual hot war. How hot this war is on land, I don't know, but Russia has moved troops in to eastern Ukraine. Ukrainian president has basically called up reserves. He's not mobilized forces yet. He may want to think about that. And in this little seaport right here called Mariupol, they have not done anything there. They haven't evacuated it, according to CNN News. They haven't done anything, but they may want to think about it because this is strategic to Ukrainian trade. And if Russia gets control over that, it could really put the noose and put the squeeze on Ukrainian trade and the Ukrainian economy by just moving a bit west and taking over Mariupol. It's probably very strategic that Russia has not done that yet, as to not directly provoke a military action by Western forces. I have seen it also announced on the news that the U.S. is moving 800 troops from in existing European locations, including Germany, into the border of Ukraine. And they're also moving F-35s and Black Hawk helicopters as well. So they're moving military forces. Now, this isn't a large military force, but they are moving forces around in Europe to help support the potential for more conflict and getting the U.S. involved directly. Lots of news today, guys. A lot of news. It's very important that we talk about this now. On CNBC, headline came out today. Biden says U.S. will sanction Russian banks, sovereign debt, and individuals after Ukraine invasion. So what they're doing is they're saying, Russia, your sovereign debt can no longer trade on American markets, and the banks no longer have access to the Western system, including the SWIFT system. The SWIFT system is basically where you get the international transfers. Now, Russia and China have been working on their own version of the SWIFT system, so that's not going to completely cripple Russia, but it will affect Russia's ability to do trade with the West and with Western nations. And before you downplay the impact of that, I wanted to talk about what Russia has that we may need and what Russia trades for the rest of the world. So here on advantour.com, we talk about what Russia has. Natural resources potential Russia is over 20% of world's reserves. They're talking about all natural resources, not just oil. This fact places Russia on a special place among industrialized countries. Natural resources used by the economy of Russia account for 95% of national wealth. There are large deposits of fuel and energy resources, oil, natural gas, coal, and uranium ore. Russia is ranked first in the world by gas reserves. And right now, Germany is looking to decertify, and Europe is looking to decertify Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline from Russia. So 32% of the world's gas reserves are now have been turned off already on the pipeline, but Europe is trying to decertify the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline, therefore cutting off 1/3 of the natural gas reserves into Europe. Now, what could be the impact on Europe of that? They don't have energy independence. Right now, the United States is shipping on container ships liquefied natural gas, LNG, over to Europe. But is that really going to replace what Nord Stream 2 was going to bring to Europe from Russia, that pipeline? I don't know, but this is going to get really, really nasty for Europe, especially as it gets cold, and they need this for their grid, especially as Germany has turned down almost all of their nuclear power, their grid power. Russia also has 30% of world production of natural gas. Second in oil production at 10%. Third in coal reserves, 22 coal basins, 115 fields. In terms of iron ore, Russia takes first place, and tin the second, and lead the third. So aluminum and tin have already gone up. I heard it reported on CNBC on TV today. Aluminum and tin futures prices are rising because of this. In 2005, Russia is the richest country in gold reserves. I don't know if they still are. I think that may be China now, but Russia is high in gold reserves. Why does that matter? Let's look at Russian exports. According to worldtopexports.com, the top exports are mineral fuels, including oil, at about 141.3 billion in US, gems and precious metals 30.4 billion, iron, steel 16 billion, cereals 9.5, machinery including computers 8.3, wood 8.2 billion, fertilizer 7 billion, copper 5.6 billion, aluminum 5.5 billion, and fish 4.6 billion. In addition, on CNBC television news today, it was announced that 1,100 companies in the United States depend upon Russian exports. And I think about 17.1% of tech companies, if I remember, this is all from memory, rely on Russia. 17.1% of tech companies rely on Russia. 17.1% of tech companies rely on Russia. So this is not only oil that we're worried about here, or natural gas. We're worried about a lot of things to both Europe and the United States. So it's a situation where what also could potentially happen is that the Chinese and Russian market, especially if China gets involved in sides with Russia, and they haven't yet, but that those markets could be cut off from the US, and all of a sudden what happens? If China gets involved and they cut off some exports, or the markets are cut off in some way or reduced because of all this conflict, what would happen to prices here in the US? The US is not a manufacturing nation anymore, ladies and gentlemen. So that could be a big issue. That could be potentially a really, really big issue. So I'm not sure at this point in time whether we really want any sort of hot conflict with Russia, and we also don't necessarily want an economic conflict with Russia either. You guys put your questions down in the chat. I don't see any super chats. They're open. I'm going to read through here and see if you guys have questions in the chat. Pasty Moss says, and if World War III breaks out, will we run out of chocolate bars? That may be the least of our worries, but it's a good one. We probably get a lot of chocolate from South America, I would imagine. All right, an update on the poll. Does the Ukraine standoff result in a new hot war? You guys, 33% exactly have said yes, 44% have said no, 23% have said yes, but limited regionally. Now, technically, we are in a hot war because we had a couple of Ukrainian soldiers killed, although I wouldn't really call that an all-out war. I do think we're really on the edge of it. And I think what we said the last couple of weeks with this, watch this and be careful, made sense. It was a little prescient what we said, because at the end of the day, Russia has moved in, as I showed you on that map. In fact, let's put that map back up. Let's go back to the map. Right here, Russia has moved forces into the region that has Donetsk and the region that has Luhansk. It is very close to Mariupol, which is a very strategic port, which Russia could just come right over here and take, which would really cripple the Ukraine. Ukraine has called up reserves, haven't mobilized the military. The US has mobilized Black Hawk helicopters, F-35s, and 800 troops in Europe to support Eastern European locations. I don't know if they're going to be right on the border and they're going to be directly involved in conflict with Russia, but we're moving assets over to that area to support it. Now, everything that I've seen the last month or so, since this has been a story, is that this is going to be a conflict. Russia wants back some of its former dependent states. I had a conversation with someone earlier today about Poland. Poland is like the third largest in-ground reserves of silver, and Poland was formerly given to Russia, I think after World War II. I don't know the entire history of that. I'm summarizing what I was told, but Poland is strategic, and Poland may be another target. And Poland is the third largest in terms of in-ground reserves country in the world in terms of silver. So all you silver guys out there, if Russia wants to continue to move and recapture some of these states that were previously under its control, that could affect the silver trade as well in terms of reserves of the next 10 years, because Poland has a bunch, and it's a big area for that. CJ Nowhere says, where does the gold come from that sovereign wealth funds can add such large amounts? Well, you had the production in Russia, you had the production in Africa, you had production in China. A lot of their sovereign wealth funds grabbed it from there off of those markets. Now, remember, it doesn't have to come through COMEX or the London market and the OTCs. It can go directly in private deals from the miners and the producers into whoever wants to buy it. And that can be third-party setup, so you don't know. It could be a third-party bank, a third-party company that buys it and transfers it to the country or the sovereign wealth fund or the central bank. There's no way to know once it gets bought where it goes, but that's how you would do it. It was also rumored that China was using third-party intermediaries to surreptitiously take gold off of the COMEX and the London markets. It wouldn't surprise me if Russia had done the same thing as well. Looks like we've got good sound. We now have about 154 people in. Good question from Pasty Moth. Will the United Kingdom join the war if it breaks out? I think it depends upon NATO. If a NATO nation is touched, I would imagine they would have to. And this is what happened in World War I and World War II, is you had all these complex military and geopolitical arrangements in which one person got attacked and then a whole bunch of other people were brought into the war. Ukraine's not a part of NATO, but if Russia goes and attacks a pro-NATO territory, I would think both the UK and a lot of European states and the US would get involved. Now, if we want to look up NATO, let's just look up NATO countries right here. NATO member states: North Macedonia, Montenegro, Albania, Croatia, Bulgaria, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, Czech Republic, Hungary, and Poland. Remember, I said Poland used to be under the control of Russia as a NATO state, was added in 1999, which has the third largest in-ground reserves of what? This, silver. So if they go invade Poland, that would bring in the US and UK. Also Spain, Germany, Greece, Turkey, Belgium, Canada, Denmark, France, Iceland, Italy, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Norway, Portugal, United Kingdom, United States. And others: Albania, Belgium, Bulgaria, Canada, Croatia, Czech Republic, Denmark, Estonia, France, Germany, Greece, Hungary, Iceland, Italy, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Montenegro, Netherlands, North Macedonia, Norway, Poland, Portugal, blah, blah, blah. That's all the states. I just read them all out to you at that last bit. So that's what would happen potentially if Russia invades one of those. If it goes to Poland, then that would involve NATO or some of those other states I just talked about. Haven't done it yet. They're testing the waters with Ukraine, I feel. They moved into the eastern part of Ukraine. Russia has said, I've seen this report in multiple places on the radio and in the written media, mainstream media, that they're calling this a peacekeeping, that they're sending peaceful troops into what's considered Russia territories. They're considering eastern Ukraine to be Russian territories based on past claims. But they're calling it peacekeeping mission. The US and Biden, the president, have called this an invasion. 2 Ukrainian soldiers have died, according to the Ukrainian ministry, defense ministry, and in the press as a result of rocket attacks from pro-Russian forces. We don't know if those are the actual Russian military or mercenaries or who they are. All of this has been reported. The US has placed sanctions. They're stopping Russia's debt from having any access to Western markets, and they're stopping Russian participation in the Western system, including SWIFT. We'll have to see what happens. And to recap, also remember that Russia puts out a lot of things that the rest of the world needs. So this is going to affect international trade, big implications for that. Any other questions in the chat? I don't see any at the moment. I answered the question about the UK. one comment here. Russia would have moved to take Ukraine a long time ago if that was their goal. Could be, maybe not. Expand upon that comment, like when in particular, when in the last 10 or 20 years would Russia have moved to take them? What would have been a better time for them? Do you think that was a comment by a name that I can't read because it's not in English text? But post what your rationale for that is, why Russia would have done it before. All right, looks like there's some argument going on in chat. Everybody be nice to each other in chat so we don't have to put anybody in timeout. I guess this would be a good time to talk about silver. So I'm going to do a little bit of a commercial for 𝙂𝙍𝙀𝙊𝙎, which is one of our affiliations because we like 𝙂𝙍𝙀𝙊𝙎. You can reach 𝙂𝙍𝙀𝙊𝙎 at 𝙂𝙊𝙀𝑒𝑟.com. That's �arksilver.com. You will get deals there that you can get nowhere else on the cheapest silver that you can buy. You can also go to 𝙂𝙄𝙊𝙀𝙆𝙄 and click on the 𝙂𝙂𝙀𝙀𝙊𝙎 link and fill out the form. In fact, I'm going to do that for you right here. 𝙂𝙂𝙊𝙀𝙀𝙀𝙀.com. We'll share screen. I'll show you exactly how to do that in case you want cheap silver. We will bring you cheap silver. You go to 𝙂𝙂𝙀𝙀𝙀𝙀.com, click on Precious Metals Deals, click on 𝙂𝙂𝙀𝙀𝙀. Actually, click on, let me go forward and do it correctly. Click on where it says Access Deals, and you'll get a form. And on that form, you can fill it out. It'll email them, tell them what you want. It'll email them and us. We'll know that you emailed. We'll track it, and they'll make sure and get your questions answered. And in that light, Ian from 𝙂𝙂𝙀𝙀𝙀, who runs 𝙂𝙂𝙀𝙀𝙀, is a good friend of mine, sent me some silver. I got a couple of these Canadian maple leaves from Ian. You can get these from 𝙂𝙂𝙀𝙀𝙀 if you wish. It's a beautiful coin. The maple leaf is my favorite, absolute favorite silver coin. Look how gorgeous that is. Look at the shine off of that. This is basically an uncirculated. He also sent a silver American Eagle. You can get those at 𝙂𝙂𝙀𝙀𝙀𝙀.com too. And look how beautiful that coin is. There we go. Get it to reflect the light correctly. Got the eagle on the back. He also sent this really cool 10-ounce silver bar from Nadir Metal Refiner. I'm guessing this is somewhere from the Middle East, perhaps. I don't recognize the name, but it's a cool 10-ounce bar, Nadir Metal Refiner. So he has access to some of the cheapest silver in the world. He's got kilo bars. He's got 1,000-ounce bars. He's got some 40% Kennedy, constitutional U.S. money coins. He has eagles and maple leafs and all that stuff. If you're interested, go to 𝙂𝙂𝙀𝙀𝙀𝙀.com. Any more questions? John Bethea says, we need another JFK who stood up on Cuba. And yes, I'm afraid that Biden is not a JFK. I agree with that comment. Meg has a question. Where can you buy the Wall Street silver coins from? Out of stock in most places. I don't know, to be honest with you. I don't know who they're using to distribute them. We're not Wall Street Silver, but you can go to that Reddit channel, Wall Street Silver, and ask that question. I'm sure they would be happy to answer it for you. Fantana Ranger says platinum 1075 USD heading toward 1100. I bought my platinum years ago at about 900. It went up, it went down. Now it's back in the money. I'm happy that my platinum is back in the money. And given the fact, let's tie us back to Russia, given the fact that Russia is the second largest producer of platinum and palladium in the world, you know, we may have a short supply of platinum and palladium, which could affect the catalyst market, which could affect what? Automobiles, particularly gasoline and diesel automobiles. That's a really good point brought up by Fantana Ranger about platinum, and we just relayed it back to Russia. Again, more risk. Russia produces a lot of stuff that we need, including oil, natural gas, platinum, and palladium, precious metals, gems, and other things. Another question, do you have any UK silver affiliates, gold, silver pros? Please. I do not have a UK silver affiliate. However, if you're interested in gold, you can go to glimpay.com and store your gold there. I am a customer. They don't pay me to advertise for them specifically, but I do like them as a customer. I have worked with them in the past. We have no affiliate deal with them, but if you're interested in gold, go to GlintPay. I do not have a silver guy out there for you. I'm so sorry. But maybe I'll find one. If we have enough UK and European people interested in silver, let me know and I'll try to find one out there for you. Fabricio says, is there enough precious metals to be used as a currency or to be used for large purchases? I think if you revalue the system based upon all the fiat money produced, then there's not enough silver because it gets used industrially. There is enough gold. You just reprice gold in whatever new terms that you want. Silver, I don't think so, because there's not enough because it's used industrially. That's my answer to that question. Jay says Wall Street silver 10-ounce silver bars are in stock at Monument Metals. Thank you for the tip, Jay. Meg says, how do you think the USD will be impacted by US sanctions and locking Russian banks out of trade financial markets? The dollar index, DXY, up or down? That's a really good question. I think the DXY in the short term would probably go up because it's the dollar is considered a safe haven asset, and there will probably be downside pressure on the Russian currency just because of the sanctions. But that short term, I think that there's a lot more it's going to go into. There's just going to be reaction, right? Action, reaction. So that we don't know. Short term, I would think the DXY up, the dollar index up. Long term, I really don't know. It depends on how everybody responds. If people start piling in to this war, the DXY could go up as a safe haven. But on the other hand, China and Russia can announce that they're officially de-dollarizing. They already are, but they could announce it, make a big deal of it, and that would put extreme downward pressure on the dollar, as a lot of their trading partners would jump ship on dollar-denominated deals, including some countries in Europe. So longer term, this could be definitely bad for the dollar. We'll have to see how it plays out. Sarge says, okay, so what value does silver take then? I think silver goes extremely high, Sarge, because it's industrial and the investment demand will be off the charts. As David Morgan often says, and I agree over history, the big price jumps in silver come when the investors come in, and they're the marginal demand from an investment perspective, which causes the price to launch. But I think there's so much industrial demand right now that I think silver is going to have to reprice no matter what, because we have about a 250 million ounce shortfall from what's produced in the mines this year to what the Silver Institute thinks the world is going to demand. And that's before we have just increased demand in silver as a monetary asset that could come from these types of conflicts. I don't, David Morgan often uses a $600 price point hypothetically, best case scenario for silver. I actually think it could go more. I wrote an article on Seeking Alpha, a 5-part series on Seeking Alpha in 2010. Some of the first articles I ever wrote publicly about 12 years ago. And I said, I think silver per ounce could one day be equal to gold because of industrial shortages and investment demand. And I'm sticking by that. I don't know if it'll actually ever happen. I don't know if the derivative market will ever actually allow it to happen. But theoretically, if you look at how much silver is valued as an industrial metal and as a monetary asset, as money, its price could exceed that of gold because of scarcity and demand. Will it? Probably not. They probably won't allow the markets to trade that way, but it certainly could. Lots of good questions in here, guys. We're going to tag off a little bit early this evening because I have some other commitments. Wanted to reiterate what we're talking about before. In fact, I'm going to throw the screen share back up there for you guys. We're going to reiterate what's going on. Russia, as you can see on the map, these two sort of red maroon areas are now occupied by Russia. That's the area around Donetsk and Luhansk. They're really close to the strategic maritime port of Mariupol, which they could go take. And you look on this map, they're close to Kyiv. Ukraine, in response, has not mobilized all its forces to retake those regions. The U.S. is sending some forces over, including some F-35 Black Hawk helicopters and some troops that are already in Europe, not necessarily in directly to fight Russia, but into Eastern Europe. It's kind of like they're slowly moving troops. What I see this as a gradual buildup to maybe a bigger potential conflict coming maybe several months from now, or even several weeks. But I do think where you see smoke, there is fire. I think Russia's pushing right now. The U.S. has responded with sanctions. I don't think the U.S. wants to go into a war over this, and they won't. But if this continues to escalate, and especially if Russia hits a NATO country, then you're going to see some forced actions. Now, some people may say, well, it never happened. Russia's not stupid enough to hit a NATO country. Yeah, it's action reaction. It's what happens in reaction to Russia going into Ukraine, that somebody else acts and Russia has to act to that, and then China gets involved or all these other countries get involved. It's remember what led to World War I and II. It's a small conflicts which led to much bigger World War conflicts because of all of these different geopolitical alliances and treaties. And it's too complex really to break down on a single podcast. But my understanding is this could very quickly escalate to something if they allow it to. Here's the information, the U.S. sanctioning Russian banks and sovereign debt. Here was information we gave on natural resources and the top 10 exports from Russia here. And that's basically what's going on, ladies and gentlemen. That is in summary what's going on. That is why gold is holding at its near all-time high of around 1900. I think when I got on the program, the gold was at 1899. It was trading at like 1904 today. Silver got really close to 2450 critical resistance and support line. It got up to like 2432 right now, trading at 2414. Silver is trading up. This geopolitical conflict is supporting the precious metals, but I also think inflation, which I actually started this program off today, is supporting it even more, because while Ukraine's a big deal and there's geopolitical risk, it's not that close to home. I think a lot of it has to do with inflation. We saw the PPI trading at 9.7% today. That's a producer price index. I think the CPI is grossly misstated because it's 2.5 points below what the PPI has been at for the last 2 months. And I think that's another reason why we don't listen to CPI. And I think if you listen to shadow stats, inflation's more 14 to 15%. The more immediate threat to you is not what's going on in Ukraine, but it's the rising prices in the economy, which you can offset by buying this stuff, the gold version of it and the silver version. This stuff is going to maintain your purchasing power. And I think when the system resets, it's going to do a lot more than that. I wanted to thank Ian at ARK Silver, that's ARK Silver, from providing us the maple leafs and the eagles and this really cool 10-ounce bar, all of these uncirculated, wrapped up really nicely. Appreciate that, Ian. If you want to get the cheapest silver, go to 𝙂𝙊𝙇𝙑𝙄𝘾 or go to goldsilverpros.com, click on deals and click on ARK Silver. Chase Wilson says, what's up, Rob? I'm doing good, my friend. I am blessed. Thank the Lord for everything that I have. Thank you for living in still the best country in the world. Thank God we don't live in Eastern Europe. Pray for everybody in Eastern Europe, especially those areas that Russia's moved into. It's not a nice situation when another country is occupying yours. It's really bad what's going on. Hopefully this doesn't end in a hot war. We're going to end up the poll. We're going to end the poll for you guys. 32% say yes. Some say, 48% say no, 32% say yes, and 19% say yes, but limited regionally. All right, that's going to do it for today, guys. I got to log off early. Thank you guys so much for joining us on the live stream. Thursday, you guys should rejoin us as we're joined by Steve Penny of silverchartist.com, who gives us his outlook on gold and silver from a technical perspective and discusses all the forces that are leading gold and silver to trade higher over the last week and a half. He's the best, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to charting. I think I'm pretty good. This guy's the best. And people I was with last week in Mexico have been doing this for 20 and 30 years. So they think Steve, his subscription price is way underpriced. And this guy's the best in the business. He'll be on the program Thursday talking about the technical charting, and we'll have more content for you this week. We're going to do at least one breaking news segment during the day, during one of the days this week. I've already got it planned out and may do more as we get new information. Thank you, everybody, for joining the program. Until next time, this is Rob Kientz at goldsilverpros.com.